The metal doors slid open with a soft hiss as Ambassador Reed walked into the private meeting room aboard the Galactic Assembly Station. The space station's artificial gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth's, making his steps more bouncy than usual. The room was small but elegant, with walls that seemed to shimmer like water and a single oval table made of a material that looked like pearl that wasn't. Sitting at the far end was Diplomat First Class Va. The alien's gray skin had a slight blue tint under the room's soft lighting, and his four eyes blinked in an irregular pattern that Reed had learned meant worry. After 3 years as Earth's representative to the Galactic Assembly, Reed had gotten good at reading alien expressions. "Thank you for meeting me in private, Ambassador," Voss said, his translator making his words sound almost musical. "What I have to share must not leave this room." Reed sat down, noting how Voss's hands, all 3 of them, kept fidgeting with a small data crystal. "Of course, Diplomat Voss. We've known each other long enough for me to know you wouldn't request a secret meeting without good reason." Voss placed the crystal on the table and activated it. A hologram appeared between them, showing a massive fleet of warships. "The Crimson Empire is planning to invade Earth," he said simply. Reed studied the hologram, keeping his face neutral. Inside, his mind was already racing, calculating possibilities and responses. "How sure are you about this intelligence?" "Very sure. We intercepted their battle plans yesterday." Voss leaned forward, his neck stretching in a way that would have looked bizarre to anyone not used to his species' flexibility. "But Ambassador, you don't understand. I'm not here to warn Earth about the invasion." Reed raised an eyebrow. "No. No." Voss's 4 eyes blinked in perfect sync, a sign of extreme stress. "I'm here to warn the Crimson Empire, or at least I try to." They wouldn't listen. Now that was interesting. Reed kept his voice calm, but he was intensely curious. "Warn them about what, exactly?" "About you. About humans." Voss stood up and began pacing, all 3 of his arms clasped behind his back. "They think Earth will be an easy conquest, a primitive world that barely has space travel. They look at your technology and see an easy target." He stopped and turned to face Reed. "They're all going to die." Reed couldn't help but smile slightly. "Isn't that a bit dramatic? The Crimson Empire has conquered 17 worlds. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." Technology. Voss made a sound that his translator couldn't quite handle. "The Crimson Empire thinks war is about technology. They think having better ships and bigger guns means victory is certain. They don't understand." "Understand what?" "That humans are different. I studied your history. Do you know that your species has had more wars among themselves than any other known civilization? Most species had 4 or 5 major conflicts before achieving unity. Humans? You've had thousands." Reed nodded slowly. "We're not proud of that fact. But you should be proud of what it made you." Voss's voice rose with emotion. "Every other species developed warfare in a straight line. Better weapons, better defenses. But humans, you developed warfare in every possible direction. Guerrilla tactics, psychological warfare, economic warfare, cyber warfare, propaganda, counterintelligence. You turned warfare into an art form. We prefer to think of ourselves as peacekeepers now," Reed said mildly. Yes, but that's even worse for them. Because now you have all that knowledge, all that experience, and you've learned to control it, to master it." Voss collapsed back into his chair. "The Crimson Empire thinks they're going to fight primitives, but they're actually going to fight the most experienced warriors in the galaxy. And they don't even know it." Reed stood up slowly. "I appreciate your warning, Diplomat Voss. I'll make sure the proper authorities are informed." As he turned to leave, Voss called out one last time. "Ambassador, when it starts, try to leave some of them alive. Please." Reed paused at the door and looked back. "We're not monsters, Diplomat Voss. We're just very, very good at surviving." He smiled again, but this time there was steel behind it. The Crimson Empire will learn that lesson soon enough. The metal doors slid closed behind him with a soft hiss, leaving Vos alone with his fears. High Admiral Kren stood before the Crimson Empire's War Council, his scaled face twisted in contempt as he finished reading Diplomat Vos' warning message. The Grand Chamber, with its blood-red walls and floating holographic displays of their mighty fleet, seemed to pulse with angry energy. Ridiculous. He spat, throwing the datapad onto the central table. A coward's warnings about a primitive world. This Vos has spent too much time among diplomats and weaklings. The 12 members of the War Council murmured in agreement. Their species' natural red coloring darkened with excitement, the traditional sign of anticipation for battle. General Tox, the head of ground forces, pulled up a holographic display of Earth. Our intelligence is clear. Their most advanced weapons are chemical rockets and basic particle shields. Their space fleet consists of, he paused, making a sound of amusement, fewer than 50 ships, none of which can even leave their solar system. They don't even have proper energy weapons, another council member added. They still use projectile weapons, primitive bullets and explosives. High Admiral Kren walked around the table, studying the rotating image of Earth. Their cities are unshielded. Their satellites are primitive. Their armies are divided among different nations. He waved one of his armored hands through the hologram. This will be the easiest conquest since the Blue Worlds fell. Meanwhile, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, the United Earth Defense Council was having a very different meeting. The Crimson Empire took the bait, General Peters said, looking around the underground chamber at representatives from Earth's 20 most powerful nations. They believe our orbital defenses are primitive decoys. They don't suspect the real weapons are hidden beneath the moon's surface. Admiral Jones nodded, her weathered face lit by the blue glow of tactical displays. Their scans show exactly what we want them to see. Old satellites, basic defense systems, and lots of apparent gaps in our coverage. She smiled. They have no idea that half of what they're seeing is holographic. What about ground preparations? Asked Colonel Martinez, his fingers dancing over a tablet as he took notes. Proceeding as planned, replied General Wong. Every major city has its underground bunkers ready. The surface structures they'll target are mostly empty shells. Real infrastructure was moved underground months ago, when we first detected their scout ships. A scientist named Dr. Miller stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. The reverse engineering teams are ready too. We've studied the fragments from their scout ships. The moment they deploy any new technology, we'll have teams working to understand and adapt it. And the bait? General Peters asked. Admiral Jones pressed a button, bringing up a map of Earth showing apparent conflicts and troop movements. Our civil war is proceeding perfectly. As far as their intelligence can tell, Earth's nations are too busy fighting each other to mount an organized defense. She zoomed in on several regions. These conflict zones are entirely staged. Our troops are actually using them for final coordination and training. What about Vos' warning to them? Colonel Martinez asked. Could that change their plans? General Peters shook his head. Our intelligence suggests they dismissed it completely. The Crimson Empire is too proud to believe a primitive world could threaten them. He looked around the room. Their pride will be their downfall. Time estimate for invasion? Dr. Miller asked. Their fleet is gathering at the edge of the Arcturus system. Admiral Jones replied. Based on their previous conquest patterns, they'll launch their attack within 48 hours. General Peters stood up, his voice firm. Then we have 48 hours to spring our trap. Every nation knows its role. Every soldier knows their position. Every weapon is in place. He looked each council member in the eye. They think they're hunting prey. They don't realize they're walking into a predator's den. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had spent centuries fighting itself, learning every possible way to wage war. Now, finally united against an external threat, they were about to show the galaxy why Diplomat Vos had been so afraid. Send the final authorization codes, General Peters ordered. Operation Trojan Horse is now active. Around the world, hidden preparations accelerated. The Crimson Empire was about to learn a very expensive lesson about underestimating humanity. The Crimson Empire's invasion fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 300 warships, their red hulls gleaming in the distant sunlight, moved into attack formation. On the bridge of the flagship Imperial Dawn, High Admiral Kren watched with satisfaction as his fleet approached their latest conquest. "Launch the opening strike," he commanded. "Destroy their primitive satellites. Show them our power." Beams of energy lanced out from the leading ships, striking dozens of Earth's satellites. The outdated communication devices exploded in bright flashes, creating a light show visible from the planet's surface. "Excellent," Kren said, his scales darkening with pleasure. "Open a channel to their world leaders." The main screen flickered to life, showing what appeared to be a hastily assembled group of human representatives. Some wore military uniforms, others civilian clothes. They looked appropriately frightened and disorganized. "People of Earth," Kren announced, his translator converting his words to Earth's major languages. "You have witnessed a mere fraction of our power. Your defenses are nothing to us. Surrender now, and we will be merciful. Resist, and we will." A burst of static interrupted his speech. On the screen, two human generals appeared to be arguing. "We can't surrender," one shouted. "My nation will never bow to foreign rule." "Your nation," the other spat back. "You're the ones who've been threatening us with nuclear weapons for decades." More arguments broke out. The transmission became chaotic as different leaders spoke over each other, some demanding surrender, others calling for resistance, still others threatening their neighbors. Kren watched with amusement as the transmission finally cut off entirely. "Just as our intelligence predicted," he said to his officers. "They're too busy fighting among themselves to mount an organized defense." "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "we're detecting missile launches from several locations on the surface, but they appear to be targeting other areas on their own planet." "Civil war," Kren said dismissively. "They're using our arrival as an excuse to settle their own petty disputes. Begin the invasion sequence. Send in the first wave of ground troops." 5,000 transport ships detached from the fleet, each carrying hundreds of Crimson Empire soldiers. They descended through Earth's atmosphere, heading for major cities across the planet. From his command post in the underground bunker, General Peters watched the alien ships approach on his tactical display. Next to him, Admiral Jones was monitoring the global defense network. "They took the bait," she said quietly. "Those arguments looked very convincing." Peters nodded. "Our actors played their parts well. The Crimson Empire sees exactly what they expected to see: a planet in chaos, unable to defend itself." "Sir," a young lieutenant called out, "the enemy transports are approaching their designated landing zones. All hidden defense systems are armed and ready." "What about the surface conflicts?" Peters asked. "All fake battles are proceeding as planned," Admiral Jones reported. "The nuclear launch signatures were perfect holographic decoys. Our actual forces are in position, waiting in the underground bases." Peters studied the tactical display, watching the red dots of enemy ships descend toward Earth. Each was heading exactly where humanity wanted them to go. Each landing zone was a carefully prepared trap, though the aliens wouldn't realize this until it was too late. "Send the coded signal to all commands," he ordered. "Operation Trojan Horse, Phase 2. Let them land. Let them think they've won. Once their ground forces are committed." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the command center knew the plan. The Crimson Empire thought they were launching a simple invasion of a primitive, divided world. Instead, they were flying straight into humanity's carefully laid trap. Above them, the alien ships continued their descent, their crews confident in their superior technology and overwhelming numbers. None of them noticed that the chaos below was too perfect, too convenient. None of them realized that every move they made was being predicted and counted on by their supposedly primitive opponents. The real war was about to begin, and only one side knew what was really happening. General Tox of the Crimson Empire watched from his command ship as the first wave of troops landed in what humans called New York City. The streets were empty, with only a few scattered groups of humans firing primitive weapons at each other, more evidence of their civil war. His troops moved forward unopposed, their energy shields easily deflecting the few bullets fired their way. "This is almost disappointing," he said to his staff. "No real resistance, no organized defense, just chaos and primitive weapons." "Sir," his aide reported, "all initial landing zones are secured. No casualties. The humans appear to be." A sudden alarm cut through his words. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from underground." Before Tox could respond, the ground beneath his troops began to move. Entire buildings suddenly split apart, revealing hidden missile silos. Streets slid open, exposing automated defense turrets, and from underground bunkers poured streams of human soldiers in powered armor that the Crimson Empire's intelligence had never known existed. "Impossible," Tox shouted. "Their technology level, they couldn't have." The first wave of human attacks struck with devastating precision. Electromagnetic pulse weapons, designed specifically to disrupt the aliens' energy shields, fired from 100 hidden locations. Crimson Empire soldiers watched in horror as their supposedly impenetrable defenses flickered and died. On his flagship above Earth, High Admiral Kren received desperate messages from his ground forces. "Their weapons, they're using our own shield frequencies against us. They have underground bases everywhere. They're projectile weapons, they're not primitive. They're designed to." The transmission cut off in static. Admiral Jones stood in Earth's command center, watching the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. "All defense grids are operational," she reported. "Enemy shields are down. Phase 3 is ready." General Peters nodded. "Launch the virus." Across Earth's orbit, thousands of seemingly dead satellites suddenly activated. Each released a swarm of tiny drones, too small for the alien ships to target effectively. These drones attached themselves to the hulls of Crimson Empire vessels, bypassing their security systems using codes extracted from their own scout ships months ago. In space, High Admiral Kren watched in growing horror as his ship's systems began to fail. "What's happening?" "Some kind of virus," his technical officer reported, frantically working at his console. It's like they studied our computer systems in advance. They know all our weaknesses." On the ground, the trap continued to unfold. Human forces emerged from their hidden bunkers in waves, using tactics the Crimson Empire had never seen before. Guerrilla strikes from underground tunnels, electronic warfare that turned alien weapons against their users, orbital strikes from hidden moon bases that the alien scans had missed completely. "Pull back," General Tox ordered his forces. "Regroup and—" A massive explosion rocked his command ship as a kinetic strike. A simple tungsten rod dropped from orbit, pierced straight through his vessel's now useless energy shields. In the Earth Command Center, Dr. Miller reported, "Enemy forces are in complete disarray. Their command structure is broken. Their technology is compromised." He looked up from his displays. "They never saw it coming." "Of course not," General Peters said quietly. "They thought technology alone wins wars. They forgot that humans have been practicing the art of war for thousands of years. We learned long ago that the best weapon isn't the most advanced. It's the one your enemy doesn't expect." Admiral Jones watched as more alien ships began to fall. "Should we accept their surrender when they offer it?" "Yes," Peters replied. "But first, let's teach them exactly why Diplomat Vos was right to be afraid." Across the planet, humanity's carefully planned trap continued to close. The Crimson Empire was learning, far too late, that they hadn't invaded a primitive world. They had attacked the galaxy's most experienced warriors. High Admiral Kren stood before the emergency meeting of the Crimson Empire's War Council, his scales pale with rage and fear. The holographic displays around him showed the devastating losses their forces had suffered in just 3 days of fighting. "We have lost 40% of our ground forces," he reported, his voice shaking. 200 transport ships destroyed, 35 warships disabled. And now, he paused, his hands trembling. "Now the humans are using our own weapons against us." The council chamber erupted in angry shouts and accusations. "How is this possible?" demanded General Tox. "They're copying our technology faster than we can deploy it." A science officer stepped forward, her scales almost white with stress. "The humans, they don't think like us. When we capture enemy technology, we study it for months, trying to understand every detail. They just take it apart, find what works, and immediately start improving it." "Improving it?" another council member asked. "Yes. Look at this." She activated a hologram showing a captured human weapon. "They took the power core from one of our destroyed ships and turned it into a handheld cannon. They didn't even try to understand how it works. They just figured out how to make it work better." In an underground laboratory beneath the ruins of London, Dr. Miller examined the latest piece of alien technology his team had captured. Around him, dozens of engineers and scientists worked frantically, taking apart alien devices and combining them with human innovations. "Their power systems are actually quite simple," he told Admiral Jones over a secure video link. "They focused so much on making them perfect, they never thought about making them flexible." "Can we use them?" Jones asked. "We already are." Miller's camera panned to show rows of hybrid weapons. "We've combined their energy cores with our railgun technology." The result: he fired one of the weapons at a test target. The projectile, accelerated by both human and alien technology, punched through a sheet of alien armor like it was paper. "Mass-produce them," Jones ordered. "Every soldier needs one within 24 hours. High above Earth, the Crimson Empire launched their newest weapon, autonomous battle drones guided by advanced AI. They watched in satisfaction as thousands of these drones descended toward Earth's surface. Their satisfaction lasted exactly 6 minutes. "Impossible," screamed the drone controller. "The humans, they've hacked the control signals. They're turning our drones around." Kren watched in horror as the entire drone fleet reversed course, now attacking his own ships with terrifying precision. How did they break the encryption so quickly?" "Sir," his communication officer reported, "we're detecting thousands of small transmitters attached to our hulls. They'd been gathering our codes and signals since the first day. Every security measure we create, they learn to break almost instantly." On Earth, General Peters studied the tactical displays showing the turned drone fleet attacking the Crimson Empire's positions. "Status report. Their drones are now under our control," a young lieutenant reported. "Our programmers say the alien eye was actually quite basic. They never had to make it adaptable because they never expected anyone to hack it." "And we've improved it," added Dr. Miller, who had joined the command center. "We've merged their drone control systems with our own battlefield eye. The drones are now learning and adapting to the enemy's tactics in real time." Peters nodded, watching as the alien fleet struggled against their own weapons. "Send word to all commands. Begin Phase 4. It's time to show them that we're not just defending anymore." "Sir," Admiral Jones said quietly, "some of their ships are trying to retreat." "Let them try," Peters replied. "But first, let's give them something to remember us by." He turned to Dr. Miller. "Are the new hybrid ships ready?" Miller smiled. "Better than ready, sir. They're eager to show the Crimson Empire what happens when human ingenuity meets alien technology." Above them, the space battle continued to rage. But now, emerging from hidden bases on the dark side of the moon, the first wave of Earth's new warships appeared. They were ugly, brutal things, combinations of human and alien technology that sacrificed beauty for deadly efficiency. and they were about to teach the Crimson Empire another painful lesson about underestimating humanity. The bridge of the human warship, Revenge, hummed with energy as Captain Walker studied the tactical display. The ship, a perfect blend of human and alien technology, moved silently through space. Behind it, 50 more hybrid warships followed in attack formation. "Target in range," his weapons officer reported. "The Crimson Empire's supply base on Mars is still unaware of our approach." Walker nodded, remembering how just 2 weeks ago, humanity had been fighting off an invasion. Now they were taking the fight to the enemy. Begin the attack. Show them what these new ships can do. The hybrid fleet opened fire. Their weapons combined human ingenuity with alien power sources, creating beams of energy that ignored the enemy's shields completely. The Crimson Empire's Mars base, their main supply depot for the invasion, never stood a chance. In his command bunker on Earth, General Peters watched the attack through a live feed. "Status report on our other offensives." Admiral Jones stepped forward. "Our forces have pushed them back across the entire solar system. The moon is completely clear of enemy forces. We've destroyed their staging areas on Jupiter's moons. And now," she smiled, "now we're hitting their supply lines." "Sir," a young officer called out, "we're detecting a massive energy surge. The Crimson Empire is bringing in reinforcements." Through a tear in space, 200 more alien warships appeared. They were larger than the first wave, bristling with weapons. Leading them was the Empire's most powerful dreadnought, Imperial Might. High Admiral Kren stood on its bridge, his scales now permanently pale with stress. "Begin the attack. We'll show these primitives what real power looks like." But humanity was ready. As the alien fleet approached Earth, they faced something unprecedented, a completely new form of warfare. Small, stealthy human ships slipped between the alien vessels, attaching magnetic mines that bypassed their shields completely. Hybrid fighters, piloted by Earth's best pilots, danced through their formation using maneuvers that violated standard space combat doctrine. And most devastating of all, computer viruses inspired by centuries of human cyber warfare infected their systems through previously unknown vulnerabilities. "They're not fighting by any rules," Kren screamed as another wave of his ships went dark, their systems corrupted by human computer attacks. "This isn't proper warfare." On Earth, Dr. Miller watched the battle through advanced sensors. "Of course it's not proper warfare," he muttered. "We learned long ago that proper warfare gets people killed. Better to win dirty than die proudly." The space around Earth had become a graveyard of Crimson Empire ships. Some were destroyed, others disabled, many now under human control. The mighty Imperial Might itself hung powerless, its advanced systems turned against it by human hackers. "Sir," Admiral Jones reported to General Peters, "the enemy fleet is in complete disarray. Their formations are broken. Their command structure has collapsed. They're starting to retreat in panic." Peters studied the tactical display showing the battle. Human forces, using strategies developed through centuries of warfare on Earth, were systematically taking apart the alien fleet. What the Crimson Empire had thought would be a simple reinforcement action had turned into a devastating defeat. "Shall we pursue their retreating ships?" Jones asked. Peters considered for a moment. "Yes, but not all of them. Let some escape. Let them run back to their empire and tell everyone what happened here. Let them spread the word about what happens when you underestimate humanity." In space, the battle was ending. The mighty Crimson Empire fleet, which had conquered 17 worlds, was running from Earth in terror. They had come expecting to find primitive warriors. Instead, they had found humanity, a species that had spent its entire history learning every possible way to fight and win. The remaining alien ships fled into faster-than-light travel, leaving behind their damaged and captured vessels. They carried with them not just a military defeat, but a terrible realization. They had just turned humanity into a space-faring civilization with advanced technology, and a proven ability to win against superior forces. Diplomat Vaugh's warning had been right all along. The invasion hadn't just failed. It had created something far more dangerous than anyone had expected. Diplomat Vaux stood at the window of his office in the Galactic Assembly Station, watching as a human ship docked. Unlike the primitive vessels he'd seen just months ago, this one was sleek and powerful, a perfect blend of human and Crimson Empire technology. He couldn't help but shudder slightly at how quickly they had advanced. The door slid open, and Ambassador Reed walked in. He looked different now, more confident, if that was even possible. "Diplomat Vaux," Reed said warmly, "thank you for meeting with me." "I had to see it for myself," Vaux replied, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly. The reports seemed impossible. The mighty Crimson Empire, defeated in just 3 weeks. Reed sat down, his movements casual but carrying a new authority. They'd made a common mistake. They thought technology alone determines the outcome of war. They forgot that wars are won by creativity, adaptability, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to survive. A holographic display activated between them, showing the current state of the solar system. Where there had once been only a few primitive satellites, now there were defense platforms, hybrid warships, and monitoring stations. Earth had become a major military power practically overnight. "Do you know what happened to High Admiral Kren?" Vaux asked. "He survived. We captured his flagship and treated the crew well. They're being returned to the Crimson Empire as we speak." Reed smiled slightly. "We want them to go home and tell everyone exactly what happened here." In another part of the station, the Galactic Assembly was in an uproar. Representatives from 100 species argued about the implications of Earth's victory. They defeated the Crimson Empire's main fleet. They didn't just defeat them. They took their technology and improved it. 3 weeks, they went from a planetary civilization to an interstellar power in 3 weeks. Back in Vaux's office, the diplomat poured 2 drinks, one human, one suited to his species. "I tried to warn them," he said quietly. "I studied your history. I knew what would happen, but they wouldn't listen." "No one ever does," Reed replied, accepting the drink. "Everyone looks at Earth and sees what they want to see. They see our divided nations and think we're weak. They see our different languages and cultures and think we're disorganized. They see our relatively simple technology and think we're primitive. They don't understand that these things are your strength," Vaux said. "Your divisions forced you to develop countless ways of fighting. Your differences taught you to adapt and improvise. And your simple technology," he laughed nervously, "you turned it into something more dangerous than our most advanced weapons." On Earth, General Peters and Admiral Jones stood in the new Global Defense Headquarters, watching as human ships equipped with reverse-engineered alien technology patrolled the solar system. "The Galactic Assembly has officially recognized Earth as a major power," Jones reported. "We've received 17 requests for military alliances in the last week alone." "And the Crimson Empire?" Peters asked. "In chaos. Their defeat here has inspired rebellions on 3 of their conquered worlds. Their reputation for invincibility is shattered. In deep space, the remaining ships of the Crimson Empire's invasion fleet limped home. Their crews told stories that seemed impossible, of invisible attackers who struck from underground bases, of primitive bullets that somehow ignored energy shields, of computer viruses that turned entire fleets against themselves. But most of all, they warned others about humanity's most terrifying quality: their ability to learn, adapt, and improve. Every defeat made them stronger. Every setback taught them new tricks. Every piece of captured technology became a new weapon in their arsenal." Back in his office, Vaux raised his glass to Reed. "So what happens now? What will humanity do with its new power?" Reed looked out at the stars, his expression thoughtful. "We'll do what we've always done, Diplomat Vaux. We'll learn, we'll grow, and most importantly," he turned back to the alien diplomat, "we'll make sure no one ever makes the mistake of underestimating Earth again. Across the galaxy, a new saying began to spread among spacefaring species. Before you start a war, ask yourself one question: what will your enemy learn from defeating you? The Crimson Empire had learned this lesson the hard way. They had come to conquer a primitive world. Instead, they had created a new superpower, one that had turned their own weapons against them, and emerged stronger from the attempt to destroy it. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and the universe would never be the same.